Today, we're going to build this. So stay tuned. Hi guys, for those of you that don't know, my name is Michael and I am the woodworker for MK Designs. Today I'm finally going to finish up the drill press table, so I don't have much of an introduction other than that, so let's get to it. So first things first, I need to cut down the plywood for the table and the fence. I'm just using a piece of scrap Baltic birch that I had. So the first two cuts were the length of the table, and this is going to be the depth. So I don't have any plans for this. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. I know what I want, and I'm just figuring out the dimensions from there. Now I'm going to cut the two pieces for my fence. I'm cutting everything to rough size at the moment, and I'll cut everything down to exact size after I get it all glued up. So I'm going to glue this up the same way I did for the top of the rolling shop cart that I built to put my drill press on. I'm just going to put on a generous amount of glue and use my brayer to spread the glue around and then clamp it all up and let it sit overnight. And then of course I'm just going to do the same thing with the fence pieces. So the next step is going to be to cut everything down to exact size. The first thing I want to do is I want to clean up one edge, and then I'll register that edge against my fence and cut it to size on the other side. And I just realized that I said I let this sit overnight, and I'm wearing the same clothes. Yeah, it's a little over a week later, right at a week later, because I got sick and just wasn't able to work on it. And yeah, it's a little over a week, so yeah. And just to answer a couple of questions that I got, yes, I am a Packers fan. No, I am not going to talk about it on my channel. That's not what my channel's about. I am in plenty of Packers groups where I talk Packers football. I'm not going to do it on here. But I do think I need to go get some more t-shirts so I can stop wearing my good ones in the shop. So once I have both pieces cut down to exact width, I'm then going to get my crosscut sled and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to clean up one edge and then I'm going to mark and cut both pieces to exact length. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out for my inserts. I think I got 9 of them out of this. I'm just using 1/4 inch MDF. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to cut the grooves for my T-track. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to cut one side, then I'm going to flip the board over and cut the other one. That way I can make sure they're evenly spaced on my tabletop. So once I have the initial cut done, I'll check to see if my T-track is going to fit, and if it doesn't, then I'll cut it again, and I'll keep doing that until it fits perfectly. And yes, I realize I said groove. I mean dado. I really do. But next I'll cut the dado for the T-track and the fence and do the same thing. Cut, check, repeat. So next I want to cut the dado for my inserts. And so I'm going to set my dado stack height by using one of my inserts to make sure I have the right height. And then I'll adjust my fence and I'll start making my cuts using the same procedure. I'll make the first cut, then I'll flip the board over and make the other. That way I can make sure my inserts are going to be perfectly centered on my table. Here I'm just double checking my depth before I go ahead and make the next cut, just to make sure everything's going to line up the way I want it to. So the way I'm going to groove out the rest of it is I'm just going to move my fence over a little bit at a time and then make alternating passes, flipping from cutting on one side and flipping over and cutting the other. And I'm just going to repeat this until I have the whole thing cut out. Now I'm going to center my table on my drill press so that I can mark it out so I know where to cut out to allow for the column, for the table to fit around the column. Once I have it marked, then I'm going to take my jigsaw and cut out a rough shape and then bring it over to my spindle sander and sand it down the rest of the way. And it's a perfect fit. Next, I'm going to take measurements for the pieces I'm going to use to hold the table on the drill press. So once I have the little pieces cut out, then I'm just going to glue them together and let them dry overnight. These probably don't actually have to dry overnight, but I just prefer to do it that way sometimes. And this time it's going to actually be 2 days, not a week or actually overnight. So 2 days later, I'm going to just take a chisel and clean up the little bit of squeeze out that I had on them, just so they don't interfere with getting the table set on there and secured down properly. So once I have the glue cleaned off, because this is oak and the way I'm attaching it, I want to try and give it as little chance of split as possible. So I'm just pre-drilling some holes for the screws. And then to attach everything, I'm just going to drive a couple of 1-inch wood screws into them, and that should hold the table in place. Now I should note that the reason I'm doing it this way is I glued the two pieces together to support it, but if I ever want to change the table, then it's just a matter of removing the screws and replacing the table and screwing it back down. Okay, now comes the interesting part. I have to figure out a way to deal with my crank, and just follow along with me. I promise it'll all make sense in the end. So what I'm doing right now is I'm marking the center of it. I don't have a lathe, and I need to get this piece of maple as round as possible, and there's a couple other things I need to do to it as well. So once I have the center marked, then I'm going to take my compass and I'm going to draw the circle around where I need it to be round at. Now there's a couple things I need to do to it before I get it round. So I'm going to set it on end in my vise, the first thing I'm going to do, and drill a hole in the end. And like I said, it'll all make sense in the end. Next, I'm going to turn it on its side and drill a smaller hole on the side before I turn it. So next, because I have to cut or turn this end piece a little smaller than the rest of it, I am cutting into it to make the work a little easier and to be able to actually separate the two better. I'm only cutting about 1/4 inch deep all the way around the piece. Okay, here we go. So the first step to getting this piece round without a lathe is I set my blade at a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to cut 45 off of each corner, going right up against the line for my circle that I marked on the end. Next, I'm going to adjust my blade to 22.5 degrees. So once I have the angle set, then I'm going to run the piece through again, cutting off a little bit more on each corner, and this is the second step to getting the thing turned around without a lathe. Okay, now the next step is I'm going to take it over to my strip sander and I'm going to sand it down. And this is the part where I cut the piece, cut into it a little bit. This is the part I want smaller, and that small circle you see there is my target. I'm just going to take it and turn it and get it sanded down to the line, and we should be good to go. And I'm also going to sand a flat spot on it, and like I said, it'll make sense when in the end. And I'm also going to use a strip sander to cut out the places for my tube hangers. And this is one of the tools I didn't talk about in my tool review from last week. So once I have that piece sanded down, then I'm going to get my oscillating belt sander and I'm going to get the rest of it sanded down smooth around. And normally if I was working with a bigger piece, or if I was doing this on furniture or something along those lines, then I would take a jack plane or a block plane and I would use that first, and then I would just use a random orbit sander and clamp it down and get it all sanded down round from there. But since this is a smaller piece, I'm just going to do it this way, and it doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be close. Okay, so I'm going to take a second and explain to y'all what I'm doing. So this is the crank for my drill press table, and it goes on like that, and it has this screw that attaches this flat spot here. And obviously with the table on there, I'm not going to be able to move it. So I've got the tube hangers that I'm going to put around these spots right here, and I'm going to tap this hole, and I've got this end flat spot for this to go onto. And I'll tighten that down and put it on here with a screw in there, put the tube hangers in here. That'll hold it up, and then I can crank it that way. So this may be a stupid idea, but we're going to see if it works. So the first thing I need to do is I need to tap the hole for the screw. And the trick to using one of these types of taps for wood, because these things are designed for metal, just take your time, go slow, and make sure you're using steady pressure, and it works fine. Okay, so now for the moment of truth. I'm going to attach the piece to the spindle, and yeah, looks like it works. So now I'm going to attach the tube hangers and the handle, and should be good to go. Now that I have that done, I'm going to mark for where I need my bolts in my fence so I can drill the holes for them. One of the cool things about my oscillating sander is I can tilt my table to 45 degrees, and it allows me to quickly put a chamfer on my fence so that dust won't collect in there. Now I'm going to cut the piece for my stop block to attach to my fence. After that, I'm going to cut my T-track and I know, I'm cutting it on a table saw, but I don't have a miter saw, and as long as you wear safety glasses and you take your time, it works just as well. Then I'm going to take a metal file and just chamfer the edges a little bit where I cut it, just to get rid of some of the sharpness of it so we don't cut ourselves on it. Then I'm going to put it into the dados that I cut earlier, and I'm going to use a Vicks bit so I can make sure I get my holes centered and pre-drill a hole and drive a screw. Here I'm marking the center of my stop block so I can drill the hole through it to put my bolt through to attach it to the fence. And then I'll use the drill press to drill the hole. Now I'm going to just slide my fence on there and tighten it down, make sure it doesn't move. Okay, so the bolt from my stop block is having a hard time sliding through, and it's a little bit too long. This is one trick that you can do. The sander sands these things down exceptionally well. But it will get hot, so make sure you're wearing gloves so you don't burn yourself. After I sand down the head, I'm just going to take it over, put it in a vise, and cut it down to the length I need. And that's that. I slide the bolt in, slide the stop block over it, and tighten down my knob. Make sure it doesn't move. And we're done. Okay, so that's my drill press table. As I said before, I don't really use the drill press that often, so I don't really have a need for anything real fancy. If I was going to do it again, a couple of things I'd do different is I would definitely figure out a better way to do with the crank, because it works, but it's not pretty, and it'll work for now, and that's all that really matters. So the other thing is the backer piece for the support on the bottom, or as my wife calls it, what'd you say? The slidey thing to keep from splintering the wood. Yeah, that's my wife's favorite, ladies and gentlemen. Cat. Anyway, so yeah, I would probably come up with a better way to do that. I don't like the ones that you insert and pull out and turn. I know you offset them, and I don't like that idea. Wood Magazine, or one of them, I don't remember, had the idea of beveling two pieces of MDF or melamine or whatever you're going to use, and then beveling your insert, and it holds it in place better. This one I can just hold down with double-sided tape or whatever I have to, and I'm not going to get as much out of this one as I would, say, the ones you turn. But then again, I don't have a big drill press either. If I had a bigger drill press, I could probably build my table a little bit better so that I could get more use out of each piece. Sorry, I had to move the camera back a little bit. But other than that, it should do what I need it to do, and it'll definitely get me through the 192 holes I have to drill for the wine rack. Which I should be getting started on that here shortly. I think I may have one more project I want to do before I actually start on it. My customer's going to Hawaii anyway, so they said no rush on it, and so I'm taking my time because I want to make sure everything is done just perfectly right for them. And so yeah, that should be the next video. I'm going to be doing something for a birthday gift for a friend of ours. That'll probably be my next video. I'm not going to promise anything yet, but that's probably going to be my next video. And
So yeah, if you like this video, if you picked up something new, if you saw a trick you liked, whatever. I mean, I used a couple of them in this one. Give me a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate if you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And make sure you click that little bell next to it so that you can get notified whenever I put up a new video. And yeah, make sure you share the page, let other people know about it, because we're growing. Slowly but surely, we're growing. And like I said, I have something special planned for when I hit 100 subscribers. And I even have something planned for when I hit 500, when I hit 1,000. But let's get the first 100 first, shall we? Because that's usually the hardest. So anyway, until next time, guys, happy creating.